Let's start with the #2 Democrat in the Senate now calling on the Department of Defense to open an internal investigation into missing texts from key officials in and around January 6th. In a letter yesterday, Majority Whip and Judiciary Committee Chairman Dick Durbin of Illinois asked the DOD's Inspector General to launch a probe into the deleted communications of several Trump-appointed officials who were tasked with deploying the National Guard during the Capitol attack. The letter reads in part, the disappearance of this critical information could jeopardize efforts to learn the full truth about January 6th. I don't know whether the failure to preserve these critical government texts is the result of bad faith, stunning incompetence, or outdated records management policies, but we must get to the bottom of it. End quote. That from Dick Durbin. On Tuesday, court records published by a watchdog group revealed the cell phones of top former defense officials, including the defense and Army secretaries, were wiped in the aftermath of the insurrection. The Pentagon claims this was standard operating procedure for departing employees, but that news comes just weeks after it was revealed Secret Service and Department of Homeland Security officials also had their messages from January 6th erased, despite orders from Congress to preserve those communications. Former Defense Secretary and CIA Director Leon Panetta was asked yesterday about the texts being wiped from government phones. Here's some of what he had to say to Andrea Mitchell.
Andrea, this is another major concern that obviously officials out of the Trump administration were taking steps to make sure that potential evidence involved in January 6th would not be there. I really do think that the Justice Department has to investigate the loss of this kind of critical evidence. There's no question that this wasn't done in a manner that just kind of was bureaucracy doing what bureaucracies do. This was a deliberate effort to make sure that very important evidence regarding what the players were doing at the Pentagon, at the Secret Service, and elsewhere were saying and doing on January 6th, all of which is very relevant to the investigation as to what happened.
You're saying this was a cover-up?
I don't think there's any question that when you go from agency to agency and find out that key messages have been deleted, something's going on here that resembles very clearly a conspiracy.
Leon Panetta there. Joining us now, the host of Way Too Early and White House bureau chief at Politico and the best-selling author of The Big Lie, Jonathan Lemire. Also, former Homeland Security Secretary under President Obama, Jeh Johnson. Mr. Secretary, let me begin with you and see if you agree there with Leon Panetta. We've heard from some other folks saying there's a chance that it is policy with departing employees that some of these texts just were wiped and their phones were cleaned. But when you go through the Secret Service, Department of Homeland Security, and now the Department of Defense, and officials at this level of those organizations in and around a critical day and an investigation surrounding them, does it pass the smell test for you that this was just something bureaucratic?
Willie, I'll answer it this way. At the senior-most levels of those departments, I'd have to say it does smell. It is problematic. Before I was Secretary of Homeland Security, I was General Counsel of the Department of Defense when Leon Panetta was Secretary of Defense. And I can safely say that if I had been Secretary of Homeland Security in January of 2021 and some chief information officer came to me with a plan to wipe clean the text or emails of our personnel on their phones as they were leaving office, I'd say, no, you don't. There's the Federal Records Act, which requires that we maintain things that are generated in the course of government business. There's the Freedom of Information Act, which means that such texts are subject to request from the public. So I don't have a good explanation for why this information was wiped just as the Trump administration was leaving office. I do want to say this, however, about the Secret Service, because I was their oversight for 3 years and I was a protectee of the Secret Service. For as long as I've known the Secret Service, Willie and Mika, they're good at the big stuff, like protecting 170 world leaders at a UN General Assembly, including the Pope in 2015. But the back office stuff, the unforced errors that continually show up in Carol Lenig's Washington Post stories, they've just never been good at. January 2021 was a moment for the Secret Service of high anxiety. The nation was on high alert. They're in the midst of a presidential transition and an outgoing president, frankly, who was unhinged. So I am not surprised that in that context, the line agents of the Secret Service who protect us didn't get the data migration exactly right. The higher level folks, I think that's a different story, and there needs to be an Inspector General investigation, in my judgment.
So that's my next question to you, Mr. Secretary, is how does that work? What's the trail? What's the process to figure out what happened here? Is it possible that it's just vapor and these texts just randomly disappeared? I mean, might there have been a directive to wipe the phones after January 6th that could be tracked down?
I think that's possible. Again, when you're dealing with line agents responsible day to day for the protection of the president, the first family, the vice president,
right,
there may be an entirely different story there. But if there was some senior level directive to wipe clean various communications around January 6th, that's a very serious matter. And there should be an IG that we trust who can undertake a comprehensive investigation of this.
We want to bring Jonathan Lemire in for the next question. And as I do that, Jonathan, congratulations. The Big Lie, #4 on the New York Times bestseller list, your coverage of the Trump Big Lie, all in that book. And congratulations.
Thank you, Mika. I really appreciate that and the support that you and Joe and Willie and this show have given me over the years. Mr. Secretary, returning to the matter of hand, so what should have happened here? Let's set aside, the line agents, but at the senior level where there are questions about what may have happened. What should have happened here? And then I feel like every time I've sort of talked about this story with someone, the question is always, well, isn't there a backup? Isn't there a cloud? Aren't these just saved somewhere? Is that not the case?
Well, what should have happened when you're dealing specifically with political appointees who are about to walk out the door is you're given a document that says, I hereby represent that I am preserving all my communications, all my documents, all my emails, all my text. I'm not taking any of it with me, and sign here. Something along those lines. I mean, that's standard in the private sector, for example, when you leave, say, a law firm like mine. And so I simply don't have a good explanation for why that didn't happen, why people exiting the doors were not required to certify that they were not wiping clean things that might be pieces of evidence that might be subject to the Federal Records Act. There's been a rising tide of awareness as the technology has evolved. Text are becoming much more prominent by way of government communications. But we're clearly at a point, and we were at a point in January of 2021, when a very basic common sense move for people who are in government services, you have to preserve things that are subject to the Federal Records Act, without a doubt, especially if there's going to be an investigation around something like January 6th.
And there's no backup cloud mechanism at play here for the federal government?
Very often there is. Things are backed up. Every time I get a new iPhone, for example, somebody comes in, takes my iPhone away from me, preserves it all to make sure that, it goes to my next phone, most notably my 15-year-old iTunes collection, my photographs, everything else. So you would think the answer to that is yes, and I think it deserves a comprehensive explanation.